Welcome to Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
It is Monday. I am Chris Graham, and on Mondays on the podcast, we talk about how, because I've been calling it Booking ACC Football. We can also call it As the Spiral Spins with Jerry Carter. We look at ACC football from, we'll review things from a perspective as if we were writing a TV show, booking a wrestling show. That's how I think of it. And how we're progressing towards what can be the best ACC championship game and whatever else we can work out for the ACC. In that sense, this past weekend, Jerry, we got to review how we did and what we can do to clean things up, because that's what we've got to do. The folks don't listen to us. We write these great scripts, and then either the actors or the wrestlers, and then whichever way you think of it, they go out and they do their own things, and then we got to pick up the pieces and then work towards next week. So, Jerry, there was a lot going on this past weekend in the ACC.
Well, Chris, I got to admit that Saturday morning, we had talked about how it was going to be a 15-hour day. I went into the day as excited as I could be, feeling like we had centered this thing. We were in for a showdown. I don't want to say of biblical proportions, because that's too much hyperbole. I was thinking, and I think I even sent this to you in a text message, the pending showdown between Pickett and Armstrong. I could not go back in my mind and come up with a time in recent memory where we had two quarterbacks that have the skill set to play at the next level, that are putting up stats as if they're playing a Madden game. They were going to be facing each other, and they were going to do it on a large stage under the lights, and it was going to be who could throw for 500 yards first. That's what I woke up with Saturday morning. And then to say that we took a couple of hits along the way, I'm not even sure where you start with the list of hits. But instead of starting negative, let's start with a positive, if you can. We're taking a look at the Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech game. You're in a situation to where Virginia Tech has just lost some tough games. We're questioning whether they're going to be of use to us going forward. We've even questioned a little bit about Fuentes and whether he's there for the long term where Virginia Tech is concerned. Chris, they played down in Georgia. They played in front of a crowd of 35,500. Which down there is 64.6%. Georgia Tech was a home favorite. Virginia Tech won a game for us. I'm not sure what that's worth to us, other than it keeps them viable in the fact that they're 2-2 in the conference. They're playing 500. Tell me your thoughts on Virginia Tech picking up that loss to Syracuse. Had to have been a gut punch. They rebound, they go down to Georgia Tech, and they take care of business. Your thoughts where Virginia Tech is concerned?
It's hard to divorce it from everything else that happened, so I'll kind of start there. With Pitt losing, I'll go ahead and start with that. Pitt losing opens things up for everything in the Coastal Division. The Atlantic is still the Atlantic. Wake is still winning. So let's give Wake the credit. They're top 10 now. With Pitt losing, they had a 2-game lead on the pack, and even more in a sense, because, Virginia Tech and Miami, even after this past weekend, have only played 4 of their 8 ACC games. But now with Virginia Tech winning, they have 2 losses still in the conference, and they're 2-2. Miami with the win over Pitt, because that's how Pitt lost, was losing to Miami. They're 2-2. They're in play now. And here's a funny thing. We've been looking forward to, I've been, and, if Pitt lost 1 game between now and November 20th, that made Virginia Pitt on November 20th much more meaningful. Virginia with 2 losses locked in. The bye week for Virginia this week. Next week, Notre Dame, that's non-conference because Notre Dame doesn't play ACC football. So Virginia's 4-2 going into Pitt. Now that Pitt game is for something, right? And Pitt still has a couple games to play. They could still suffer another potential L. But whether they do or not, we know that game for Virginia Pitt is going to be a big game on November 20th. Guess who else plays on November 20th? Miami and Virginia Tech. So November 20th now is going to be a really busy day for us. We know Wake has a fun one. We'll talk about the Atlantic race a little bit later on. But Wake has a fun one on the 20th. All of a sudden, Jerry, Pitt losing to Miami, particularly. I mean, they could any of the next 3 games they could have lost would have opened up Virginia at least. But them losing to Miami, Tech holding off Georgia Tech means, well, we've, at least for now, I know both Miami and Virginia Tech still both have a couple of games to play before November 20th. They could slip up. These are teams that have played great, and they've also played horribly at times this year. But man, now we're going to have to root for November 20th to be a very exciting day, because then not only that, let's just think down the road here a little bit. I mean, just the possibilities of things that could happen. If Virginia were to beat Pitt on the 20th and Virginia Tech were to beat Miami on the 20th, and they both, stay unscathed otherwise, then the Commonwealth Clash is for a berth in Charlotte, for a potential berth in the Orange Bowl. We've got some fun ones coming up because Virginia Tech was able to right the ship after a 3-game home losing streak. So that's the stakes for Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech is in a situation now, and Chris, we're at that part of the season. You could create your own chapter and call it connecting the dots, where you start to measure a game early on. Let's use Miami, for example. We're going to go to the Pitt game next. Look at Miami and look at their losses. And you're going, wow, okay, they kind of got dump trucked twice. Well, what do the 2 teams that dump trucked them have in common? They're in the top 5 in the country. Now that Michigan State has moved to number 5, and of course you have Alabama at number 3, all of a sudden, Miami they lost 4 games. Yes, they lost the Virginia game. You're talking about a field goal, the Carolina game, the late pick. Now you're in a situation where their 2 non-conference losses don't look as bad. They still weren't competitive. They still weren't competitive in those 2 games. But if we could go back to when we were looking at the Miami-Michigan State game, and Michigan State just blew them away in the 4th quarter. At the time, you're not thinking that much about Michigan State. We certainly weren't thinking they were going to rise to number 5 in the country. So we needed Pitt to take care of business. We needed Pickett to have a great day. I'm going to be honest with you. I followed that game as much as I could. I did not see the safety or not safety call. I still haven't found film of it. But it was a great game. It was an exciting game. Pickett did throw for 500 yards. Now, all of a sudden, Pitt went from being a 9.5-point favorite. They lose that game at home, and you're still sitting there when the game's over. Pitt had a game to play with, if you will. So obviously Pickett hurt himself a little bit in that what most people are going to remember is when he was driving down there to win the game, he did get intercepted at the end. But when you're looking at Miami now we have to ask ourselves, what can we do with these guys? You're in a situation to where they're 2-2 and 4-4. Chris, I'm not sure that half the league isn't 2-2 and 4-4 at one point in the process. So when you saw that score, we needed Pitt to win. We needed Pickett to play well, because everything we were gearing up towards Pitt UVA. What was your takeaway when Miami pulled that game out?
Oh, that opened the door. I mean, from an excitement standpoint, it opens the door for Virginia. Selfishly for me, I'm a Virginia guy. But then when of course Miami got to 2-2, so that keeps them in a race of some sort. And it's a big win for Miami. Now you have to wonder which narrative we have about Miami. They've played poorly, they've played well. It gets Virginia Tech back in. So if we're trying to build excitement for our product, our TV product, it does that. I mean, again, both Virginia Tech and Miami now have to not have slip-ups the next 2 weeks. And both have games that could provide slip-ups. Virginia Tech, I think it's BC and Duke. I'm not sure right off the top of my head. I looked at Miami's schedule and don't have it ingrained in the head right this second. But you can slip up against anybody. The way those 2 teams have played, they've beaten teams they shouldn't have beaten. They've lost to teams they shouldn't have lost to. But let's just presume that heading into November 20th, they hold serve and that they're both 4-2. I mean, we got ourselves a pair of huge games with implications for Charlotte in December. So Miami winning that game, and then strictly for Miami, it's just, Tyler Van Dyke. I saw him. I mean, Virginia fans and Virginia observers saw him. I think that was his first start. He had played a lot in the Central Connecticut State game. Can't get anything out of that kind of game. With De'Aaron King going down to injury and being lost for the season, and he's done now as a college football player. That was obviously a tough blow. De'Aaron King, a very dynamic quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke, first half against Virginia in that loss a few weeks ago was what you'd expect out of a guy starting his first game against the Power Five. He wasn't very good. Second half, he really got rolling, and he's been rolling ever since. So I like the direction Miami's taking. And so that's a huge win to go to Pitt. Pitt's got all the stakes. If you're Miami, the only stake you have is that you're trying to keep your coach from getting on the hot seat and getting fired. Big win for Miami, obviously. And I like what a young quarterback who's growing. You love to see that.
Well, you look through the ACC as a whole, and Chris, I think it'd be very easy to call this the year of the quarterback. You're in a situation to where obviously everybody knows what Armstrong's getting done. Pickett just became the all-time passing leader up at Pitt. He just passed, I think it was Van Pelt. We also found out that Howe now has thrown for more yards than anybody that's ever played quarterback for UNC. The young man that's maybe a little bit under the radar that, and they just call him Sam down there. They just like, Sam is so big at Wake Forest that Sam doesn't need a last name. He's quietly put together something nobody else in the country has. Wake Forest is the only team playing football right now that has scored at least 35 points in all 8 games. So now you're sitting here, and it's a kind of a who's who of pass happy teams. Can you remember a time in recent history where there were 4 or 5 different guys that were capable of being the top gun, if you will, in the ACC?
Right off, no. It's hard to think, but that said, that is the most important position. Obviously, in the game of football, quarterback is the most important position. The quarterback and the center touch the ball on every offensive play, and the quarterback's responsible for so many things in the field. Even if you just hand the ball off, before you hand the ball off, you have to survey the defense. You have to figure out where pressure may be coming from, what the defensive alignment suggests. Can you change the play at the line of scrimmage? Most quarterbacks, especially guys who have some experience, have the ability to do that. Then you've got to read through your progressions, figure out which direction to throw the ball to. You got to do this 60, 70, 80 times, maybe 90 times a game. If you're Brendan Armstrong, as many plays as he runs in a game, they're one of the top 5 teams in the country in terms of plays per game, snaps per game offensively. That said, everybody's looking for a good quarterback, and ACC this year, we have a plethora of them. And when you start looking at the guys who are pulling the triggers for these, the ones we're talking about here, the top 4 I can think of right off too are all guys that you can foresee easily going to the NFL. I know Brendan Armstrong. I watch him every week. He's not just a guy putting up stats. Sometimes guys who put up big numbers in college are what you call system guys. And the numbers are out of whack to their abilities because they may be surrounded by great skilled players. They've got a great offensive line. I'm thinking of some of Ohio State quarterbacks. I'll be honest about what I'm thinking of when I say system quarterbacks. Guys who do great in college, but then they don't do so well when they go to the NFL. Armstrong has a great system. It's a very unique system, but he can make all the throws. He can throw ropes all over the field. He doesn't throw wide receiver screens that then guys break off for 20 yards and he gets a 20-yard pass out of it. He's throwing the ball down the field a lot. And you see the same out of other guys. Kenny Pickett has been starting for 4 years. He didn't start the entire freshman season, but he took over late that freshman season for an injured quarterback. And boy, he's just been getting better every year. And he's a guy. It's going to be hard to keep him out of the NFL. Sam Hartman, with his experience, he's a guy on the other side of things. He's the opposite of an Ohio State quarterback. He's got good receivers. I don't want to put down anybody that he's got in his receiver corps. Dave Clawson and that offensive staff have put together a great system, and they run it very well. But no one would argue that Wake Forest has the talent of Ohio State. And Sam Hartman, though, is putting up numbers for a top 10 team now, and he's been doing so for a couple of years. And so, you look at these guys, and you just gotta love them. And the ACC is we don't have a Georgia, we're not the SEC, we're not the Big Ten putting teams in the playoff. Well, this year we won't put, likely. I don't know. We'll talk about Wake Forest in a little bit. We may not have a team in the playoff this year, but damn, I love what we're doing quarterback wise. Receivers, we've got a lot of receivers going to be playing on Sundays in the next few years. Offensive lines I forgot Sam Howell, who's obviously going to be a guy who's going to be a top pick down the road too. I just love what we're doing there. And there's a reason that the SEC is, yes, number one in terms of alums in the NFL. The ACC is a not too distant second. And it's because we play good football.
And just real quick, the actual passing yardage through this weekend, you got Armstrong is number one at 35.57. Pickett is number 6 at 27.55. Hartman is number 9 at 24.75. And Howell is at 21.92. He's 16. So 4 of the top 16. And Chris, with Hartman, I would argue that he would have gotten more yards if he'd been able to complete more games. Wake Forest is, they needed them for every bit of the Army game. But Wake Forest also played Norfolk State. They played ODU. They played Duke. They played games where Hartman's not seeing the field at the end of them. So 4 guys in the top 16 is pretty wild. Before we move on from the Miami Pitt game, we talk about the attendance. Last week, Pitt played at home to Clemson. Again, they're playing in a rather large stadium. They drew a crowd of 46,977, which is 68.6%. And last week when I was in the building and I was talking about the fact that there might have been 5,000 Clemson fans, and which kind of surprised me. I thought that might have been a little low. I guarantee you there wasn't 5,000 Miami fans in the stadium. So on paper, if you just glance at this, you're going, Pitt drew less people for Miami than they did Clemson. I'm not sure. I mean, there's no way to know, in actuality, I'm not sure that they did. I think that Clemson their fans obviously weren't there. And Miami, I've never seen them travel with any kind of numbers. So again, kudos. They had 46,977. It was exciting TV. I think we're just going to agree that it didn't go the way we needed it to, but we'll do like we do every other week. We'll regroup and try to go forward.
Yeah, let me interject real quick about Miami fans. To be fair, they don't travel to their own home games very well, so you can't expect them to go to Pitt, right?
There you go.
And Miami's a brand like Miami's football, at least, is a brand like Duke basketball, Notre Dame football, where at least 20 years ago, maybe Miami football had fans who couldn't tell you that the university is actually in Coral Gables, Florida, don't know that there's really a university attached to it. They just love, the bad boy U image, the Jimmy Johnson years, the national championship years, etc. We're a ways off that for them now. They're the Roman Empire in decline as far as that goes. So those Miami sweatshirts that people were wearing in the 80s and 90s who had no idea anything other than the fact that they like rooting for those teams. They're collecting mothballs, or they're in mothballs right now collecting dust, I guess. So Miami doesn't go to their own games. They're not going to go to Pitt.
Absolutely. Now the third game going down the list, I think this one was the most predictable, and it's also the number, Chris, that will look the lowest. Okay, the crowd at Wake Forest was 31,613. The difference is that's 100.3% capacity. Most folks don't realize just how small the field is there, or the stadium is there down in Winston-Salem. They actually sold out past capacity. And I was, again, in the building. I noticed something I hadn't seen this year in an ACC game, because they actually could not get the crowd in the game by the kickoff. When they actually kicked off the game, just from the gate I was looking at, there was still another 800 or 900 people trying to get into the stadium, which is kind of, it's a bad break for some people, but it's a good sign that Wake Forest again, they did a lot of things. They sold a lot of 4-packs. They discounted their tickets, but they at least got people to show up. And they played in a game that, again, the final score 45-7 for Wake Forest. Again, another game where Sam didn't get 4 quarters of playing down there. Their opening drive took 5 plays, and then something crazy happened on their second drive. They had to punt. And it's kind of interesting because you were there, I believe, at Scott Stadium when you watched Wake Forest, and they're playing almost a dismissive style of football. And you're just sitting there and they're like, okay, well, we're going to beat you. Maybe we're going to decide how many we're going to beat you by. We had talked about it a little bit at the after they played UVA, because at the end of the first quarter, the yardage difference between Wake and Duke was less than 30. Duke went up and down the field with them. They just couldn't finish. And then it's like at some point, Wake just said, okay, enough of this. We're just going to run you out of the stadium now. And when you're watching them play, they do it very quietly. It's not like they have star players. You're in a situation to where where Wake Forest is concerned, I almost feel that for what we're trying to do for us now and on that side of the bracket, it's got to be Wake Forest or bust. They're 8-0. I did not realize when they made the top 10, Chris, I read a statistic they're the last team in a Power 5 conference to make the top 10 in football. I did not think that was even feasible. I didn't question the stat, but I'm sitting there. So there's 2 sides of that coin. The front side of the coin is we've got a team in the top 10. The bad side of it is they're the only team we have in the top 25. So you're in a situation to where and Wake Forest now is 8-0. You're in a situation to where they got 1 home game left. So not only do they have a tough schedule coming up, but they're going to play some games on the road. They get NC State at home, but they're going to have to go to Clemson, and then they're going to have to go to North Carolina. And I think they wrap it up I want to say at Boston College. I don't have their 4th game locked in, but I almost feel that we're at a point where a month ago we might have been saying, are we really going to watch Wake play in Charlotte? I think now we almost have to be saying, please let us be watching Wake play in Charlotte. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I just looked at ESPN's FPI at Football Power Index for one measure of how games are being looked at down the stretch. Because, of course, Vegas only looks a week out for lots of reasons. Wake is actually an underdog in 2 of their next 4 at UNC this weekend, non-conference game for those 2, to reiterate that. But then they're also an underdog at Clemson. From an FPI standpoint, they would be an underdog at Clemson. And even the NC State home game, FPI only has that one. That's basically a pick 'em, 50.2%. Actually, no, they'd be an underdog. I look at that now. So they're actually an underdog, according to FPI, in 3 of their next 4. Now, I know that's just one rendering. But that tells you that they got some tough ones coming up. Even the BC game, they're around a 69% favorite in that one to win that game on the road at BC. A little bit of a factor there for BC being at home. So, they're not out of the woods. They're 8-0. They're number 10 in the country. But at this stage, their marquee win would be Virginia. And so, it was a front-loaded schedule in terms of getting to 8-0. But UNC, NC State, Clemson, BC. I know that each of those 4 has their flaws. But UNC at 4-4, they're still the UNC team that was picked 9th in the preseason, picked to win the Coastal. They still got a lot of talent there. At some point they'll put it together. It may not be this year, but at some point they'll put it together. NC State is very much in the running. That game on the 13th is a huge game for Wake and for NC State. Actually, it's an elimination game for NC State. assume Wake wins that game. They go to Clemson. They're probably sewn things up if they win that game, as far as Atlantic's concerned. But still, as far as us in a playoff's concerned, they got to go beat a Clemson team that, again, just like UNC, they were the preseason ACC favorite, the preseason Atlantic favorite. They were top 5 preseason in the national polls. They still have all that talent. They just haven't put it together. Will they put it together this year? Will it be next year? I don't know. It could be on the 20th. So, gosh, yeah, they got a lot of tough games left to play. And, if that's why I say if they get to 13-0, because we'll presume that they've either beaten Pitt, UVA for a second time in that case, or Miami or Virginia Tech. If they get to 13-0, they better be in the playoff. They will have, because at 8-0 right now, they're not a playoff team. But if they're 13-0 after winning what would be a tough schedule of 5 games, they better be in there.
Well, it's going to be interesting as we shift over to North Carolina with the 4th game. We had talked about what we needed to happen here. We needed Notre Dame to actually win this game, which might be the only time in a non-conference game we're pulling for that, because it's going to put a better shine on the game with Virginia. And we talked about how playing a great game, we talked about him putting some stats up. The play where the Notre Dame back took it 91 yards after being stopped twice, going to the right, he turns around and goes to the left to seal it. That was Notre Dame 44-34. One interesting stat for me, Chris, having also been at 2 games actually at Notre Dame, I was surprised by the fact they did not sell the game out, and they missed it by a decent margin. They had a crowd of 71,018. Now, that was 91.4%. You're in a situation to where your thoughts on Carolina coming out of the game, and what did I say before about a team? When you've got teams that are playing, you've got Carolina, like Virginia Tech, like Miami. They're at 500 in the conference. They're at 500 overall. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking for North Carolina here with 4 games remaining on what they could possibly do for us.
They can win games and give us another. I mean, they can win games, but they can also. I mean, at this stage, for example, we were both sides last week on the Notre Dame UNC game, and then we decided, hey, let's have Notre Dame win, and they did. So that might have been, in one sense, might have been short-sighted just in this sense. North Carolina now at 4-4, if they lose to Wake, then that's not an impressive win for Wake anymore. Because then all they did was beat a 4-5 team, even though Wake would have contributed that 4-5. If North Carolina could have beaten Notre Dame, yes, we were saving Notre Dame for later. We were saving Notre Dame to give Virginia a nice win if Virginia can beat Notre Dame next Saturday, whatever time of the day that is. But now, Wake, UNC's got Wake and Pitt. UNC loses to Wake. It's a non-conference game. Doesn't affect their standings in the conference. That doesn't really matter. Then they're 4-5 going to Pitt. So Pitt doesn't even get a good win out of that either. But that's not our fault. That's UNC's fault. That's UNC's fault for losing to Florida State, for losing to Georgia Tech earlier this year. They would be a good win for somebody down the stretch if they'd won those games they should have won. But yeah, at this stage, UNC doesn't really do anything for Wake or Pitt. So I guess we just let UNC lose the next couple. They play Wofford in a non-conference game for some reason on the 20th. Though when everybody else is playing big games, they're playing Wofford. And then they play at NC State on the 26th. I mean, what UNC needs to do for us when you look at their schedules, they need to lay down. They need to go 0-3 the rest of the way against FBS teams. Because if they beat Wake, if they beat Pitt, if they beat NC State, they screw things up for us. All UNC can do for us is screw things up.
That's pretty much the way we are with Florida State and with UNC at this point. Jumping down to the next game, this was a bad beat moment waiting to happen. Days gone by, we had Florida State at Clemson. We had a 3-point game. If you were betting the under or you were betting Florida State, Clemson wasn't covering. We weren't going to hit the over. They did play the game in front of 79,097, which for Clemson is 97.1%. the play on the last play of the game gave the over into play, and then Clemson covered the spread 10 points to 9.5. So it was an interesting moment. Kudos for the Clemson crowd still being there. Florida State was in this game. They were in this game. They were leading the game in the fourth quarter. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, if Florida State wins this game, now we've got two more teams at 4-4. And I'm still thinking in my head that Clemson could still go 9-3. And you can't be embarrassed by a loss to Georgia. There's going to be 12 other teams with a loss to Georgia. You lost to NC State at NC State, and you lost to Pitt at Pitt. So I'm sitting here thinking Florida State's is going to screw this up. And Florida State and Clemson both being 4-4 is of no value to us. So fortunately, Clemson kept it going. And the interesting stat where Wake Forest comes to town, yes, Clemson is vulnerable this year, but they still haven't lost in that stadium. It's, they have not been beaten in their building in front of their 80,000 faithful. Now, I did want to share an anecdote with you because the 20th is coming up, and that week Duke has the Thursday night game. So I'm sitting there going, hey, I could go to a football game on the 20th. And I took a look at the Clemson website, and their tickets at face value, Chris, for the upper deck are $80. Okay, that's $80 to sit on the roof of the building. Now I'm going, okay, I'm not sure I want to spend $160 for us to go down there. So I go on to the app that's so popular on TV now, the Game Time app. And there's somebody who was selling their tickets in the upper deck for $13. So it's kind of a mixed bag, if you will. Yes, they're still putting 80,000 people in the building, but I'm not sure how many times in the past that you could have gotten into Memorial Stadium for $13. So now the week before Wake Forest, they're playing Uconn. Okay, which Uconn and UMass are the two teams that just, it's sad. And Duke's probably appreciative of both of them right now. So I could see people passing on that day for the game with Uconn. I was a little surprised that people were willing. It wasn't like I got the only two that were up there. So give me your thoughts for a second where Clemson is concerned. It's been easy for the rest of the league to be disgruntled because they've just been taking the whooping stick to people for so long. Take a look at whether you want to look at this as a sports writer, a sports fan, a UVA guy. Give me your thoughts on Clemson at this point. They're 4-2, they're 5-3. What can they do for us going forward?
Let's see. They can, they can be Clemson. I mean, as best they can. It's hard to say they can be Clemson, but we know they play Wake Forest on the 20th, that big day, the 20th. We know it's a big day. If nothing else, we got UVA Pitt for at least half of a shot, controlling your own destiny for the ACC Coastal. If you're Clemson, you mentioned Louisville at Louisville, and then then Connecticut, then Wake. They got to beat Louisville from our standpoint. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Got to beat Louisville just to keep on track. They'll beat Connecticut, so they're 7-3 going into Wake at home. And as you mentioned, they haven't lost at home. That makes it so that if Wake escapes Death Valley with a win, that's a meaningful win. At 7-3, Clemson's ranked again by the time they play Wake. If Wake is undefeated, if Wake gets to its next two games and shows up with a perfect record, I shouldn't say 2 games, 3 games to get there. I guess that's right. They would that would be 2 games. Yeah, if Wake comes in 10-0 and Clemson 7-3, Wake is 6 or 7 in the poll probably, and Clemson's probably in the low 20 or 20 to 25 range. That's a meaningful win for Wake. So go beat Louisville. We know you're going to beat Connecticut. And hey, if the flip side of that, if Wake, somehow stumbles, and I don't say somehow, they've got, and not just against Carolina. Carolina's a non-conference game, strangely, but if they were to stumble against NC State on the 13th, then all of a sudden Clemson could be that game with Clemson on the 20th with Wake could be for a shot at a game in Charlotte. So Clemson ain't out of this yet when you start thinking about that. Wake's got some work to do to just make sure that game with Clemson is what Wake wants it to be for, and not what Clemson wants it to be for.
Now, the next game, we won't spend a lot of time on it because I'm not sure that the people there were spending a lot of time on it. Up in the Dome, Syracuse 21-6 over Boston College. We've talked about the situation. The Syracuse was coming off a gigantic win on the road at Virginia Tech. This was the old Big East showdown, the history rival. 32,022 came into the Dome, which is at 65% capacity. Syracuse has put together a couple of decent wins. We got Boston College now. Again, went 4-0. They did the schedule. I mean, they beat a team in the SEC. It was Mizzou. They went 4-0. Now they're back to 4-4. As Dino righted the ship up there, and you've got Syracuse now a win away from being bowl eligible. Tell me your thoughts on whether it be the crowd, the game, or those two teams going forward.
Not much to say. I mean, good for Syracuse. I love seeing them the last couple of weeks get things turned around. Dino Babers maybe he's one win away from a bowl. That bowl's, they'll play in some cold weather bowl game. But just the fact that these are things to build on. I mean, because their losses this year weren't bad losses, and they beat Liberty, a good independent team. So big win for Syracuse. Boston College, we were skeptical a little at 4-0 because they hadn't really beaten anybody. Now they're 4-4. Boston College can play spoiler in a couple of ways. They've got Virginia Tech this weekend. They could certainly play spoiler there. They could play a spoiler role against Wake in a few weeks, but I don't know that I expect them to. But they could, because they can move the ball, and they play both Tech and Wake at home. And I've said this before on our show that small stadium can be tough to play in. The sound collects. It's a place that's when the kids show up and the fans show up, it can be a tough place to play. But Boston College, I don't see a lot to build on right now. Whereas Syracuse, they're moving in the right direction.
Now, after making the short drive back up from Winston-Salem, got back to the house, had a choice as to whether to follow the UNC Notre Dame game or the Louisville NC State game. And I hadn't seen a lot of NC State other than, doing your box score hunting. So I decided to pass on North Carolina Notre Dame and focus on Louisville NC State. And the short answer is I want my money back. Now, NC State did score a couple of touchdowns late to win the game. There's the part of it because we're leading into the offensive game of the year with our next conversation. This was a defensive struggle, and I don't know if the defenses were that good or if the offenses were playing that poorly. They had a nice crowd there. It's a 7:30 game at 53,123. NC State was favored by 6. We needed NC State to win. The building was at 92.2% capacity. It just wasn't a well-played ball game. But NC State shook off some of the cobwebs of losing to Miami. They came home and they won the game, but they didn't win it in an overwhelming fashion, if you will. Louisville is in a situation now. They're sitting there at 2-3, and then there's that 4-4 record again. You've got NC State only a one game back in the loss column at 3-1 and 6-2. Walk me through what your thoughts are about what we can count on for either one of these two teams, starting with NC State, because it's kind of important.
Oh yeah, I'll probably just stick to NC State. Louisville is another 4-4 team. They're 2-3 in conference, but 4-4 overall. They're playing for a how far south they can possibly get for their bowl game, and it's not going to be very far south. NC State at 6-2 overall, but 3-1 in the conference. They're still obviously very much in the mix in the Atlantic Division race. Gotta go to Florida State this weekend and do what they need to do. Just win, baby. I don't, impressive or not, they just got to win these games. And so it wasn't impressive, but they won. If they beat Florida State, that Wake game is huge for both those programs on the 13th. So that's what we want. We want that game to be huge. We just want as many big games as possible these last few weeks. So State's got to go and do it again.
Now, where Louisville is concerned, again, that you got that 4-4. Well, they made Cunningham, who's again was for a while was leading the country in rushing touchdowns, which is kind of odd for a quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see how Louisville can bounce back from that, because I know the rule of thumb is we're going to send our best team south and our good teams north. When half your league's at 4-4, I'm not sure how it's going to separate itself out. But let's switch out to Provo. I needed that game to be exciting after watching the Louisville NC State game, and boy was it. The only thing that was a surprise to me was they said that it was the first time in forever. Now, BYU Stadium holds 63,470. It was the first time in forever that they had a home game with less than 60,000 in the crowd. It came in at 57,685, which was 91%. That number surprised me a little bit, but the action in the game itself, Chris, I think it's a highlight reel of how to play offensive football. It coupled with Pitt and UVA when the day started. I'm ready to print posters advertising the game. We're in a situation to where through the first half, I'm thinking in my mind that was the most entertaining 30 minutes of football I maybe ever watched. So before we get to the second half, what were you thinking on the emotional roller coaster ride of the first half yourself?
That was it was the most exciting. It was like watching two guys play Madden football. If you've ever, and some of our younger listeners might, when you go to a friend's house and two guys are playing, and neither of the guys playing on the controllers on the Madden football game were interested in playing defense. They were just thinking in their head when they were playing defense, I can't wait to get the ball back and throw a bomb and score a touchdown real fast. That's all it was. It was 42-38 at halftime. The over-under, I think, in this game, I don't think it was 60. They were 80 at halftime. I remember, we had some folks over to watch the game with us Saturday night. And when Virginia scored the touchdown to go up 35-31, it was still like a minute and 20 to go. And I said, well, BYU better not punt here, because if they do, Virginia's going to score. Well, BYU scored. Virginia got the ball back. They scored. So it was crazy. Then the third quarter was like a football game again, just one touchdown each side. Fourth quarter, I've seen a lot of speculation on this. The late start may have had an impact on Virginia, because by this point, it's well after midnight. Our body time, local time for the BYU folks and kids. I want to say it was 12:45 or so. It would be 10:45 for them. So it's kind of late for them too. It was a local kickoff was 8:15. That's late for anybody, for a local kickoff, even for a football game. But, it felt like there was some of that. There were a couple of plays. Wayne Talapapa, I can't figure out how that hit on him was not targeting. He fumbles the ball. He got knocked out. Virginia's on a bye week this week. We're not going to get a lot of information about injuries, but if they were playing Saturday this week, he would not be playing. He was still in the tent when Brennan Armstrong got hurt. And Brennan Armstrong couldn't even go in the tent because of whatever they were doing to Talapapa in the medical tent. So, Armstrong's play was just there's been a lot of speculation on that. To me, just he landed on the ball diving for a first down, and you land on the ball. People don't think about that. They're looking for a hit. What big hit was it? He landed on the ball, and that hurts. And so we'll hope he's better. I keep looking for information, and no updates, and there probably won't be any updates because Virginia doesn't play this week. But and you know, to BYU's credit, the final score ends up being 66-49. I guess the Talapapa injury was right after another BYU score made it 52-49. They went and scored on that drive because they scored on every drive. And then it was 59-49. Armstrong had the ball around midfield, threw an interception because right after the play where he lands on his side, he tries to throw the ball and has a hard time and underthrows his guy and it's picked off. That game was closer than the final score would indicate. BYU will get credit for playing good defense in the fourth quarter. I just explained what happened. There was a targeting that wasn't called. There was an injury that, knocked Virginia out. But credit to BYU. They moved the ball a lot better than I thought they would against Virginia. Virginia scored 49 points in a loss. That's the most points in school history in the game Virginia loses. So tough way to lose. And then also for Virginia, they've had two shutouts this year, and they've also had two games giving up 59 to Carolina, 699 yards in that game, 66 to BYU, 734 yards in that game. It's either feast or famine with that defense. And, the offenses they play coming up, Notre Dame, Pitt, Virginia Tech, they're not Duke and William & Mary. They're not Illinois. Those are good offenses. So, Bronco and his staff have a week to figure things out. And I've done a roster analysis today. I don't know. There's a lot to figure out. There's a lot of injuries on that side of the ball for Virginia. Assuming Armstrong's healthy, he's going to have to continue to outduel guys to win games. And when you put up 49, including 42.5, and you still lose, that tells you that the margin for error for Brennan Armstrong on that offense is very, very small.
Well, you talked about briefly there about the time, and we talked before the game about the fact that the one thing the ACC as a whole doesn't do is cross the continental divide on the other side of the country. They just don't play a lot of games on the West Coast. How big of a factor do you think it was? And is that the reason that it's not a viable scheduling option for most of the ACC schools?
Let me think about that. Kind of repeat that, and let me because I need a second to collect.
Okay. Where the ACC is concerned, as a whole, they do not travel across the Western Continental Divide a whole lot. In fact, very, very seldom does it happen. I think this is UVA's second time in recent history. Duke, for example, the furthest west they've been is to Chicago to play Northwestern. How much of a stock do you put in the hour time differences? Plus, you throw in the late kickoff. Is this the reason that the ACC doesn't play a lot of Pac-12 / Mountain West type games?
Virginia. This is the third time they've played at BYU. They've played at UCLA. They've played at Oregon. So they've played out there a few times. We play the basketball teams play a lot of not necessarily west of the Mississippi, but you travel a lot midweek. This is I don't know, because when you play on a Saturday, Virginia didn't fly out until Friday. They didn't fly on Thursday. We were actually talking with a team doctor on Friday for a podcast on the Jerry Ratcliffe show. I don't know if I put a lot of stock into that. I think it may just be a factor of there's plenty of games you can play close by. We have this alliance thing coming up with at least on paper with the Pac-12 and Big Ten. That would assume that there could be some interplay with these conferences down the road. I hope we see more of those kind of games. What I also hope for, though, is the TV controls the scheduling, and it's unfortunate the way that works out. Playing at 10:15 body time is just not fair. Just like it's the same when maybe it was UCLA. When UCLA played Virginia in Charlottesville around 2014 or 2015, it might have been 2015. That game kicked off at 12 Eastern. That's a 9:00 body time for those UCLA kids, which means, they're out there warming up at 10 o'clock our time, 7:00 their body time. It's hard to imagine that the UVA kids, with no bye week in between, they're playing 12:00 kickoffs, even in the night kickoffs that they play are still so much earlier. And then all of a sudden, you practice during the day, you practice in the mornings, usually your practice schedule's set all year long. And then for 1 week, you've got to train your body to be awake, not just at 10:00 body time, but 11:00, 12:00, 1:00 body time, and not just awake, but playing football. I mean, it was hard for a lot of us just to watch the game and for me to try to analyze the game play for play. And I was up till 4 a.m. body time, Eastern time, trying to write about that game. Imagine what it's like. You're trying to run up down the field and block and tackle and evade blocks and tackles and everything else for hours at a time. It's just tough. And so I would like more of the games, just better TV scheduling. ESPN needs to show respect both for the West Coast teams coming our way. Don't make them play at 12 Eastern time. And when we go out that way, don't make us play late at night. It's just, I want more of those games, not less. Just have some common sense to it.
That makes sense going both ways. Having spent the 20 years on the West Coast, you'd be surprised at the number of coaches out there in the bigger sports, the basketball and the football, how much they openly complained about the scheduling whenever they had to go to the East and talking about a noon kickoff type of thing. It was a fun watch. I noticed that when they released the times for the week after next, they kind of stuck a pin in the Virginia Notre Dame game. Well, this past week, they stuck a pin in 3 games. So right now, they're sticking a pin in the Virginia Notre Dame game. How much do you think that comes down to Armstrong's health?
Comes down to in every way, shape, and form. The backup quarterback's a true freshman, Jay Woolfolk, who is the future quarterback for Virginia, but he's the future quarterback. He's, presumably if Armstrong is injured and not able to play, Woolfolk gets snaps. Bye week would be ideal in that sense to get Woolfolk ready. He can throw the ball well. He's also a baseball pitcher who was a possibility for getting his name called in the MLB draft this summer and probably didn't, only because he expressed his desire to go play at UVA. He's actually going to play baseball in the spring too. He's got a fastball in the low 90s. The guy can sling the ball and is also athletic. I'm trying to compare him to a type. And when I say the name Kyler Murray, I don't want to put those expectations on the young man because that's very, very unfair. But I'm just trying to put a picture in people's minds. Having seen him, he got a lot of snaps at the end of that Duke game a few weeks ago. Jerry, you were in the stadium for that too. He's about 5'10" or 5'11", very speedy, with a good arm. And so, maybe for UVA fans who are listening in, maybe to not quite put the expectations of Kyler Murray on him, Marcus Higgins also comes to mind. Marcus Higgins played wide receiver at UVA for a couple of years. Then he was a natural quarterback. After Matt Schaub graduated, Higgins actually played starting quarterback for UVA for a couple of years at the end of his career. Then went to the NFL and went back to wide receiver. Another 5'10", 5'11" guy. He's now the wide receivers coach at UVA, who can move, who could throw the ball, could do a lot of things. But Woolfolk is a true freshman. And he didn't get into the program until the summer. Jacob Rodriguez, another true freshman who's in the line of succession, potentially a quarterback, at least graduated high school a semester early and participated in spring practice. Woolfolk only had this summer. He only had the summer, the training camp. And so you go from a guy that we're hyping as a Heisman candidate to a true freshman without a lot of snaps, even in practice. There's a lot of weapons on that offense, and this kid can throw the ball and he can be very patient. He can run the ball, but he's going to make mistakes. And so with that defense being as porous as it is, it's if Armstrong is injured and not able to play, and see, there's the degree of severity of injury. I don't want to play with a broken rib, but we've seen quarterbacks, pro quarterbacks in the past play with broken ribs. So he could play. They could put a flak jacket on him, tell him not to run. God forbid he gets hit and has to take the pain that you take getting hit. Also, a complicating factor there is it's on his left side, his throwing side. So how much does that affect him throwing the ball? But even if it's just sore ribs, whatever that means, if it's just a sprain, if it's some tendon that's injured or something like that, it's still going to hurt. It still probably limits him as a runner. So unless UVA fans, when I say unless we're just completely lucky and this was just something that turns out to be almost nothing and he's got 2 weeks to repair and get ready, then that's great. But I think this is going to be at the best for Virginia fans. You're going to have an injured quarterback who's not going to be able to scramble and run and do those design runs, and that'll affect the offense in some way.
It's going to be interesting to see. And again, it's an answered prayer, if you will, that this is a bye week. So it's a situation to where it'll have as much of an opportunity, again, to heal up. But it looked like he knew exactly what he had done when he was walking off the field. And you're sitting there, you're hoping for the best. I was scanning for information as well. So we're going to go with no news is good news on that front. Is that a safe statement?
Yeah. And I'm searching for news, and they're not going to be too forthcoming with news at Virginia, especially again with a bye week. Even in a regular week, we might not know until Saturday, whatever time the game is Saturday. We might not know until we get there early, and I say the reporters get there 3 hours early. The first thing we may have to do is look for number 5 if he's out there, and the number 5 with the red hair to see if he's out there, because I can almost predict what will happen. They're not going to have any news this week. Bronco's not going to do a press conference this week because it's a bye week, and so there will be really no news coming out of Virginia. He'll do a press conference on Monday. If I had to bet, he'll be if Armstrong at that point hasn't recovered, we'll just hear that we're still waiting for word, and word will come on Thursday. Unfortunately for us media types, Thursday doesn't do us any good. We don't have access to the coaches on Thursday. So Bronco would know on Thursday, but we won't know on Thursday. We will have to get there 3 hours before kickoff and look for number 5, whether he's warming up or not. I'm thinking back to Ty Jerome getting hurt before the Duke game, when the championship year for Virginia, before the game was Williamson and Barrett and Reddish. And literally, where the reporters are out there, we're there 2 hours early, and hey, Ty's warming up, and it actually wasn't. I think he finally came out for warm-ups maybe about 15 minutes before. He might have been shooting in the back gym, but so we were all able to. We start tweeting and Instagramming and Facebooking out, hey, Ty Jerome is in uniform and he's shooting shots. So it may end up being that. So I don't think we'll hear any good news. I don't think we'll hear any bad news for some time there.
Well, anybody that's been listening to us all year will be quick to understand we spent a lot more time talking about this past weekend than the weekend coming up. And that was by design, Chris, because we only have 6 games this week. And I'm going to label this the week of devastation. We have 1 Friday game. We have 5 Saturday games. And it is so obvious as to who we need to win these games for us to keep moving forward. So we're just going to spend a little less time on them. What's making me nervous is the lines are a lot smaller than I thought they would be. Friday night, you got Virginia Tech going to Boston College. Both teams are 4-4. The difference is Vautech's 2-2, BC's 0-4. The lineup there is the Hokies by 3. Man, do we need Virginia Tech to win this game?
Oh yeah. We at this stage we're looking towards November 20th. Virginia Tech needs to win this game, but that's what I was saying earlier. Though it's when you look at this Virginia Tech team, they've beaten teams they weren't supposed to beat. North Carolina, they've lost to teams they weren't supposed to lose to. Syracuse. So yeah, they've got to go out and win, and momentum is on their side. That was a nice, clean, quiet, unassuming win in Atlanta for Virginia Tech on Saturday. Let's continue. Let's get another one on the road.
The second one, which is the noon game on Saturday, God love the Blue Devils, want them to play a little bit better, but the last thing we need them to do is to trip up Kenny Pickett and the Pitt Panthers. The opening line is 20.5. For our purposes going forward, Pitt's got to do this. They got to do it early. They got to do it often. Again, it wouldn't be bad for Duke to remain competitive in the game, but I think we're on the same page here. We need Pitt to win, and the question is, will they cover or not? Yeah,
Pitt win. We need them to keep moving forward. We got to get Pitt to I mean, again, we're looking towards November 20th. It's 2 weeks away. We're trying to set up what could be a slate of games on that day that you can't miss. And boy, I mean, if things can go right way, we can have 12, 3:30 and 7:30 blocks with huge games each way. I don't presume that folks at ESPN are smart enough to do that. They'll probably put them all three in one block because that's just what ESPN does. But no, Pitt needs to get this win. They've done their part, if you want to say. I mean, they're not in the CFP race anymore. I don't think they were anyway. I don't think a team losing to Western Michigan has, even with one loss, they weren't going to be in the CFP with a loss of Western Michigan. So they fell on their sword. We didn't want them to fall on their sword, but they did, to give us November 20th as a probably very interesting weekend. So you've lost your game. Now go out and win, and let's play Virginia on the 20th with at least part of a spot or part of a sliver of a spot of control of destiny in the Coastal Division as part of the equation.
And the next one, Chris, is also a noon kick and then 8 miles down the road. And this one is just terrifying to me for what we're trying to accomplish. The Heels are a 2.5-point favorite over Wake Forest. Again, it's the fluky non-conference game. Chris, this isn't about non-conference. This is about, we need the Wake train to keep going, because a loss here to a 500 football team, I think, is a crushing blow, whether it's a conference game or not.
It's a crushing blow for CFP possibilities. Yes. Just like I said about a minute ago about Western Michigan beating Pitt. You can't lose to a 500 team, a mediocre team. At this stage, Carolina is that, unfortunately for Carolina fans. They're a mediocre team. So no, you lose this game, you're out of the CFP. You're still in control of your destiny for the Atlantic Division and for the ACC championship. But Wake has to, at this moment, for at least the moment, has to have bigger thoughts than the Orange Bowl in mind. Isn't that something? Wake Forest football is thinking bigger than the Orange Bowl. So yeah, they got to win.
Georgia Tech goes down to Miami. It's a 12:30 kick on the good old RSN. The line is Miami by 10. It's going to be interesting to me to see which Georgia Tech team shows up, but I think we need the Canes to win this, and we need them to win it. I think in a way that will make them look relevant.
I think just win. Whether they win by a lot or whatever, I think just win, because Georgia Tech's tough out. I've seen them in person. You've seen them in person. Carolina's definitely seen them in person. This Georgia Tech team is good. I mean, so just a win will be enough, I think, in this one. Even though their record doesn't indicate that, we know that would be a nice win for Miami here. And they, at this stage, Miami just needs the W's to pile up. We're trying to get their half of the Virginia Tech Miami game on the 20th to be meaningful. So they got to just take it 1 point on a missed field goal at the end. That's all. I don't care. I'd love an impressive win, but just win the game, Miami.
The next one is the 4:00 game on the ACC network. And this one is scary. North Carolina State is going down to Tallahassee. The line is NC State by 3. At 3-1, 6-2, NC State is still relevant in the big picture. I think a loss here is really going to put a dent in that. Tell me your thoughts.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Yeah, we want the 13th. See, I'm talking about the 20th all the time. Wake and NC State on the 13th only means something if NC State still has just the one loss in conference. So no matter what happens to Wake in Chapel Hill, we want the 13th to have a marquee game. I mean, we know we have Virginia Notre Dame at the non-conference game, so we already have one game that has some non-conference glow to it coming up on the 13th. But man, wouldn't it be great to have a Wake NC State game on the 13th, where NC State at home has the stakes of being able to get a win. They've already got one over Clemson, then get a win over Wake, and then they would control their destiny. They would have wins over the two top contenders for the Atlantic in their mind. So, but to get there, they got to win this one. So let's have State win this one.
Now we got another one, the nightcap, also on the ACC network. You've got a 5-3 Clemson team, a 4-4 Louisville team. The early line is Clemson by 3.5. In my mind, this one's as big as any of the rest of them for our purposes of trying to keep Clemson relevant going forward.
Yeah. Clemson needs a win. We were saying this earlier. I was saying this earlier because I'm thinking down the road. This could be the other meaningful game on the 20th. Now Clemson's got 2 losses in conference, but I'm thinking ahead. Hey, things happen. We've seen unforeseen circumstances pop up. If Wake loses to NC State next weekend, then the Wake Clemson game on the 20th carries a lot more meaning if Clemson still has just 2 losses in conference. And because then a Clemson win over Wake, and if NC State were to bobble down the stretch, Clemson could actually make their way back into Charlotte. I'm not saying that we want that. I'm just saying it's a possibility, and it's better to have that possibility in mind just in case Wake slips up at NC State. So let's get Clemson some W's here. This is the only conference game they would have before the 20th. They play Uconn next week. So let's get Clemson the win here in a tough environment, and then then we'll see what happens down the stretch.
Just taking a real quick glance at the following week, we'll have a Thursday game, UNC at Pitt. Saturday, Notre Dame UVA does not have a kickoff yet. Syracuse at Louisville at noon. Duke at Va Tech at 3:30. BC at Georgia Tech at 3:30. Uconn and Clemson will be at noon. And the other 2 games they stuck the pin in is Miami at Florida State, NC State and Wake. Chris, the question that I have now is, in reference to trying to make a stand for the playoff, does the list of potential people, and they're going to be a long shot, but is there anybody past Wake Forest at this point that we think we could arguably make a case for?
You mean anybody in the ACC past Wake Forest?
ACC.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, Pitt even, I think I said this a couple minutes ago, even if Pitt had gone and won out, without the upset loss at Miami with Miami this past weekend, I don't think with the loss to Western Michigan that they were a playoff team. I just don't know that you can put a team in a playoff that had a loss at home to a MAC team. No offense to the MAC, but I don't think you could do that. So no. And now that they've got 2 losses, I mean, even if they win out now, and even if they win out and they're 11-2, if they beat an unbeaten Wake in the ACC championship, I just don't see it. I can't see that. Because at that point, Pitt would be saddled with a home loss to Western Michigan and a home loss to Miami. Miami at best is going to have 4 losses this year. They'll probably have more than that when the season's over. So, no, I don't see Pitt and NC State. I can't fathom NC State or certainly Clemson or Virginia. I mean, everybody. So no, it's Wake or bust. And I'll be honest, I just don't see Wake getting through that gauntlet of games unscathed. I just don't see it. They may have 2 or 3 losses by the time it's over with. And I love what they're doing. I love Dave Clawson. I've said that a lot. And I said that before this season. I've said it for seasons dating back. I thought when Virginia was looking for a new coach before Bronco Mendenhall, I think back in the Mike London era, I was thinking Dave Clawson. So before Mike London got the job after Al Groh, I was thinking Dave Clawson would have been a great choice. I love what they're doing there. I don't see Wake getting through this stretch. And so the ACC, I think, is going to be clearly going to be out of the playoffs this year.
Well, you're in a situation now where it's going to be kind of ironic because we dealt with it with Clemson for years. The knock against them was, well, they only played in the ACC. Is it possible that that's going to be held against Wake if by a long shot they run the table? They've got 3 tough games. They're not even favored this week. If they were to go 12-0, if they were to get there, do you see the people, the powers to be saying, yeah, but they only played in the ACC?
No. I think if they get through this gauntlet of games, that would include a win over likely Pitt in the ACC championship game. I mean, if they get through these games, they're 13-0 against a schedule that included this gauntlet of games. And really, it would be also a factor of how much the rest of college football is a little down too. I mean, Georgia is unquestionably the best team. I don't think there's even a close second right now with Georgia. So no, I think that's part of it too. If Ohio State hadn't stumbled and lost to Oregon at home early in the season, if Alabama hadn't stumbled earlier in the season, and Alabama's going to have to likely play Georgia, and they've got some tough games still to play before an SEC championship game. Cincinnati, it's when you start to compare resumes, is Cincinnati's resume any better than Wake's? I think that would be one of the equations there. So no, I think if they run the table, it's going to be hard to keep them out. As long as the teams that they play coming down the stretch don't just flub and it become 7-5 teams after Wake would beat them. If we need Clemson to win every other game, if they're going to beat Clemson, we need NC State to win every other game. If Wake's going to beat NC State, we need Pitt to keep winning. If Wake's going to beat Pitt, we need them to have some wins over 9-3 teams, not over 7-5 teams. But I think that will be the case. So if that all happens, it's a lot of ifs, but if Wake is 13-0, they're in the playoff.
Last question from this side, and I'm hoping that we don't have to answer this. Boston's impressive. He's been impressive everywhere he's been. Is he coaching Wake Forest next year in your mind?
I don't know him. I've interviewed him a few times at ACC kickoffs, but that's just interviewing. That's just talking to a guy asking about football. He's not making a lot of money there. I looked this up a few weeks ago. I was having this discussion with someone else. He's making $2.1 million a year there. That's at least half of what he's probably worth to a top program. He's only in his, I think, like mid 50s. And when I say that, I looked it up and he's like 53, 54, 55, somewhere in that range. So see, he could certainly get hired somewhere else and you could expect him to be around for 8 to 10 years to build your program and, not just be there for a short time and hand it off to someone else. He can be there for a while. So from those standpoints, I just don't know. There are guys who just say, you know what, I did it here and I want to be here, and maybe Wake will figure out a way. It's a small private school with a 31,000 seat stadium. It's going to be hard for them to justify giving him a lot more money. They're not going to be able to pay him what he's worth. He's not going to make, Wake can't afford to pay him $4 or $5 million a year. And if he got an offer and it was for $4 or $5 million a year, Wake, he can't go back to Wake and say, can you match that? They can't match that. But does he look? I don't know.
Chris, the most interesting thing I saw this weekend inside of that stadium is one of their boosters, whose name's already on the giant scoreboard down there, dropped a check for $20 million to bring his donations up to $50 million to build a facility to house the football team. That is stunned me. It made me get up and applaud the moment. I'm sitting there because my thoughts were Wake are on that same thing. It was a few years back, I think it was pre-Louisville being in the ACC, Wake made a run to the Orange Bowl. And it was a situation where I'm going, okay, that was a nice thing, kind of like Duke making the ACC championship game. The question is, can these guys stay relevant at this level? I pull for the underdog, so obviously I'm pulling for them. The question is, even if you lose a game or maybe you lose 2 games and you finish 11-2, do you think that Wake Forest can maintain playing at this level?
No, not at 11-2 level every year. Jim Grobe had them in an Orange Bowl in the mid 2000s decade. It's hard at us. I mean, at a place like Wake or Duke or Vanderbilt or Northwestern. I would put Virginia in the equation too because of the academics, but Virginia is a bigger school. It's a state school. It's a public school with a lot more alums, with a bigger stadium. But the academic side of things for those schools is tough because you've got to. I mean, I just did an analysis of UVA's roster, and I was looking at a message board before we got on the podcast here. And someone lamented that, wow, Chris Graham analyzed the Virginia defense, and we only have 1 4 or 5 star on the defense getting snaps right now. And I hesitate to say we probably only got 1 offensive guy too. And so you don't get the same kids that the Alabamas and Georgias get. They've got to be well-rounded students and good football players. So you tend to get the lesser recruits, and then they work hard and they get better in their time there. And then by the time they're done, they're good players, but you can't miss. And if you have a couple of misses one year, you go from 11-2 to 5-5 or 5-7 or whatever you might be. And so, whereas the Alabamas can miss on some 4 and 5 stars that were maybe overrated by the recruiting services, and hey, that's okay. We've got a bunch of other ones over here, so we'll just put those guys in. And so, it's the margin for error is so much smaller. And then, so I'll take Virginia out of the equation now. When you're Wake or Duke in the ACC, Northwestern or Vanderbilt, at Wake and Duke, they, if you have at best 30,000 fans paying for the tickets every week, that's half of what Virginia can get. Even when Virginia's only getting 45,000 in their stadium, that's 15,000 more than Duke and Wake get every week. And that's 15,000 times 25 or 30 or $40 plus whatever they spend in concessions. That adds up. That adds up to some millions every year that you're not getting. And so, this is where I depart from being a hardcore sports guy. People who run businesses that bring in the amount of revenue that college football programs bring in would not be paid even $2 million a year, like Dave Clawson's getting paid to run that business. If Nick Saban's making $9 million, Alabama football brings in about $150 million a year. There is not a single CEO in the world for a $150 million business that makes $9 million. Not a single one. Wake Forest is making a fraction of that off of football. And so they're not going to be able to, if Dave Clawson gets an offer somewhere else and he wants to take it, he's going to take it. It's going to be funny money. And Wake will have to find another guy that can do magic with with less resources than everybody else. That $20 million donation, Jerry, that you stood up and applauded, Virginia's trying to raise $180 million to build its own football facility. It's an arms race, and they're all chasing the same thing, which is W's, which translates to TV dollars and ticket sales. And I even look at this from this perspective. All Virginia's doing with spending $180 million is going to catch up to where everyone else ahead of them, North Carolina, Clemson, et cetera, have been for 10 years. And by the time Virginia gets that operational online, Carolina and Clemson are building their next one. So, I guess that's a long way of saying, Jerry, I love them, but no, there's just no way. Enjoy it now, Wake Forest fans. And if the next time Virginia has a good season, enjoy that season, because you get them every few years. You can't possibly be Clemson or Alabama and replicate it every year.
I couldn't agree with you any more than that. Very well said. It's again, Wake Forest is a good story. It's a good story. I'm pulling for them to go 12-0. I just don't think Brad Stevens is the guy that comes to mind after what he did with Butler in the national championship game 2 years in a row. You're going, okay, can he stay there and make Butler that kind of team? I think Dave Clawson is a phenomenal coach. I enjoy watching his kids play. I can't tell you past the first 4 or 5 who they are, but he makes it work. And I just see him. Satterfield made a huge mistake. Satterfield ran a great program at Appalachian State. He knew he could cash out. He cashed out and he went to Louisville. The problem is, after going to Louisville, he flirted with South Carolina. And his team didn't respond to it very well. It was a very public courtship, if you will. So where Clawson's concerned, I would love for him to stay. I don't think it's a reality for him to stay. But if he's going to go or flirt with going, I hope he doesn't make the same mistake that Satterfield made, which is to go on the date and then decide to stay.
Yeah, it's all speculation now, but because if Wake stumbles down the stretch, he's going to be. I don't know. He's done what he's done at every stop, and it includes some really out of the way stops. We're talking about Clawson here. I would hire him if I were an AD. I'd hire him to run my program wherever I was, Power 5, SEC, ACC. He could be an acquired taste. If I would think he would do well in a place, because he's already doing well in a place where you have less resources and you have to be innovative. And I would think if I'm him, he's done that everywhere he's been. He's been at tough places to win, and he's one of those places. What would a guy like that do if you gave him all the resources in the world? I don't know. I don't know if he'd be any better at it than anybody else. So it's almost like with Cutcliffe there, Jerry, your guy Duke. Do you take a job somewhere where they have all the resources in the world, more money than God, because all you can do is screw up your reputation. Hey, you finally gave him resources, and all he did was go 6-6 3 years and got fired. So if I'm him, I kind of like where I am. and he's making more money than football coaches should make, even at $2 million a year. So he might.
I'm with you. I hope he's there for the long run.
I hope he's there for the long haul. Yeah,
he's good. He's good for the show.
Yeah, indeed. He's good for us. Yeah, even if it's only every 2 or 3 years that Wake can be as good as they are this year, that's better than what we had for 100 years of Wake football. So he's given us something to talk about. We're talking about Wake in November being in the top 10. That's something no one else can say that they've ever done.
That's a good story. And Chris, it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to next week. And this coming Saturday, we need our 6 teams to take care of business so that we can keep the ship going in the deep end of the pool.
Yes, indeed. So we'll be trading texts, Jerry, as to mark our progress. You're always good at helping me with that. And for our listeners out there, hey, have a busy week. We've got one of the Jerry Ratcliffe show. We'll be interviewing a really interesting series. We've got a series of interviews coming up with the first 4 African-American football players who ever played at the University of Virginia, plus their coach, a guy named Al Groh you might have heard of. Al was their freshman coach back in the late, I think it was 69 or 70 was the season. And so we got those coming up this week with a bye week. No preview for UVA football this week, but we'll also get ready for basketball season. We got some with basketball season only being a week plus away. So a lot coming up on AFB and with the podcast here these next few days. Look forward to it. Everyone, thank you for your time. Of course, Jerry, thank you for your time, and we will talk to everyone again soon.
Thank you for listening to Street Knowledge with Chris Graham. Get the latest on the Who's and up-to-the-minute local news, politics, and sports online at AugustaFreePress.com.